we've got a bit of coastal wind. I don't know if that's going to affect my voice, affect my tone. It's Monday the 20th of May, and the 20th of May is one of those days that you can consider it's autumn, and we've got KZN weather that is ideal, because the temperature around autumn is between your 15 to 20 degrees Celsius, and we've got a situation of this place becomes, on the east coast, very different climate to the rest of the country. I don't want to venture off too much in the weather condition point of view. The weather conditions are always going to be favourable with the east coast type of condition, but we've got quite a lot to get through. We have a bunch of questions that have been sent to the website, and we're going to be dealing with some quality questions that will undoubtedly just put people on pause through their very busy lives. And the idea around Mindrive's performance, my best introduction around that is that I'm very interested in the metacognitive and the learning how to think aspect in all aspects of life. I've been on a journey where my golf instruction and my actual pursuit of spiritual development through the game of golf has led me to question quite a lot of thoughts as well as beliefs in the way in which you develop the mastery and how you have to face your dragon. And there's quite a lot of people that are in psychological and cognitive sciences that understand these theories in depth, and the practice element is something I'd like to dive into, because it's very evident that some people are kinesthetically driven, where we have thoughts and processes that are enabled because us as human beings, we are the drug. The diet, the other aspects of performance, mind performance, you would actually dig quite deep into each interpersonal relationship with physical needs, what's actually happening with the diet, what exercise actually does in terms of its medicine. Then you've also got to consider the socio-economic and the social impacts on the thought and the belief system. So the science for me is a methodical type of approach, and hence maybe being quite a driver in the way I've achieved certain accolades. I would actually really have to dig quite deep in my own psychological framework and move towards a place of right-sidedness. Let's talk about the hemisphere of the brain, because you would almost use golf as the metaphorical analogy. The metaphorical analogy being that you can overdo your strengths and they can actually become a weakness. So I'm not saying golf is like every other sport, but when you have this obsessive drive to pursue excellence, you can unfortunately put yourself in imbalance in the general skills that are required in life. So you can see a lot of professionals that have maybe pursued the track of excellence maybe a bit too soon, and they feel like they are behind the curve. And I'm talking about a growth curve where in balance you find that there are other avenues in life that require that same type of improvement curve, but also keeping awareness on the forget curve. So I'm very happy to start episode 2 of Mindrive's Performance with a lecture that was actually a destination for me, because my background was that I did not attend private education, and I am very distrustful of the education system, not just in the African context, but just from a global context, I think worldwide there are some big issues as to the mental conditioning at a fundamental basis, and I feel like the education system is very skewed because your talented instructors and teachers, they have diminished over time because unfortunately with globalization and the way corporates have taken over, we have this bias and skew which has been compensating certain players of the system, and the really important people that do, massive contributions to society, they're the ones that actually don't necessarily have a correlating benefit or correlating return on investment. So you don't have sustainability and this beautiful student-teacher relationship that correlates to physical needs. You really are only going to find a student-teacher relationship where it's done out of love, and unfortunately there's no system that is unfortunately going to be a byproduct of corruption, fear, anger. You need to do things out of love. So I do think about my family. I had a grandfather that coached and helped a performance sport like swimming, and he did that out of love. He would have generally worked with quite a lot of talent, and I think also the fact of the matter is people that wanted to improve were the people that he was surrounding himself with, and I feel that has a huge impact with quite a lot of issues because money was taken out of the equation. And as sports have really developed over the last half century, so has the science behind the sports. So I had a huge passion to pursue and understand the human body during performance, and I think I wasn't too sure exactly what the curriculum would cover from an undergraduate level or postgraduate level, but I knew that my destination of being in Cape Town 2004 January and be in this lecture with Professor Tim Noakes was definitely a destination. So it was 7 years of a compulsive obsessive disorder, which in 1997 I said this is where I need to be and this is the route that I'm going to follow, and I achieved exactly what I had set out for myself. But I think in that type of state it was an achievement, but also I just feel like I could have smelt the roses a little bit more along the journey, because it was like my personality. It was an all or nothing type of pursuit, and I'd like to touch on that first lecture because it was groundbreaking in the problem solving thinking and critical thinking aspect of a scientist. And I feel that scientists, if you look at the benefit of maths and science at a school level, we do need more teachers that are providing that type of subject matter, because if the world had more maths and science, I am a little bit biased to say that we would live in a better world if that was the case. But the world is dominated with law and engineers. So maths and science, yes, I know it heads towards the engineering route, but if we understood the world a bit better, then there would be a much more beneficial change moving in the right direction. But at the end of the day, the economics has been the reason for all the change, and at the end of the day you'll find a lot of mathematics and scientists not really fitting in to the current system. So unfortunately you do see people like myself who pursue a line of 7 years or maybe 10 years of massive self-improvement, upskilling. It will lead to 7 to 10 years of maybe academic routes or academic pursuits, and therefore there's a bit of a dead end if you don't fit into a certain paradigm. Unfortunately, you don't really have an identity, and then you'll find, just in my situation, that you'll end up having to look for an entrepreneurial venture, or you'll have to take a risk and go into an aspect of business where you will have to use your critical skills and your learning. And I think a lot of people get quite scared with a scientist because they operate in a certain bandwidth, and there's always a threat, whether their relevance or whether their position in the economic system is actually being challenged. So it's very hard if you just take what's happening globally. You're going to have very conflicting views, but at the end of the day, for the last 50 or 70 years, what has happened in terms of advancements has shown, especially from warfare through to science and technology, and now for medical advancements. So it has its place. So going back to Mind Drives Performance episode 2, we're going to go to a critical lecture which I attended in January 2004. It was a lecture titled Robert Semmelweis, and it was historical research perspective. The take-home message was that you had to take such a long-term view of a certain cause and effect model, which has been the underlying statement for bad medicine, and bad medicine has been around for centuries, even 1,000 years or more. But bad medicine is a combination of Western and historical ancient medicine, pseudoscience, and what is currently the pharma component of economics is a big reason for how the economic system seems to keep thriving on the increase in population, not necessarily the mortality rate, but just to issue the fact that the systems require certain nations to have certain resources, and resources include human and manpower to benefit the economic product, the GDP. So this study goes back to the 1840s. It's an interesting time because I could tell you that that was actually where I'm at right now. Historically, that was the start of the colonization of the East Coast and KZN. But in a place in Europe where you would say that at this point in history, the Europeans were dominating trade, and they were establishing all their trade routes around the world, because at this time it was the shipping industry, and at this point in time there was a lot of urbanization issues in the most dense populated areas in even Holland or the Netherlands, stretching up north to the United Kingdom, and even places like Ireland. So there's quite a lot of history just with medicine and what was actually happening when certain travel was being made between the North Sea to get to the United States, North America at this time. Then there was also a trade route to head towards the southern tip of Africa rather than the Suez Canal to get to the Dutch east side of India, and obviously to further out to Far East Asia and Australasia. But that's getting away from the topic. I would like to talk about this Robert Semmelweis. Who was he? He was a doctor that actually was observing, and that's the point I'm trying to make about Mind Drives Performance. Is a scientific approach has a very critical thinking.